Okay, so today we're going to start with the square western saddle. This is one of my new patterns that I don't have a book for, so I'm presenting it in video format. This is going to be a multi-episode due to the length of time it takes to make a western saddle. I will show you how to make a working saddle. We're not going to make a pleasure saddle, and I'll talk about the differences as I go along. We'll start with the first page of the pattern. This is the reduction ratios page. So if you want to make it for smaller sizes, it tells you how much to reduce the pattern. And I believe you can do that right inside Adobe in the print section. You could say, put it, reduced by, make it 85% of or reduced by 15 for like a T2, which is your smaller backed ponies, traditional scale Arabs. They need a slightly smaller because their back is slightly smaller. So, and again, remember to reduce your tree by the same amount. Okay, that's that page. Then the next page is, this is your basic saddle. This is what every saddle would have. It's got your stirrups and horn and cantle cover and latigo and cinch keeper and all of your skirts, and then of course your suede backing. Okay, pretty simple. You cut out the squares around the items, and then we'll put it, trace it or cut it out in the appropriate materials. This page here is of options. So I'm going to do a working saddle, and each of these has an option for either working or pleasure. So this here would be a working saddle. This is going to be a heavy-duty suede protection in both the gullet and the sides. Now, if it was a pleasure saddle, you would decorate it and put silver on it and make it really pretty, and you would just have a band, okay? And then for your cinch, this would be, no matter what, you would use the front rigging in my pattern. And there's different options for billet and front cinch that are not here. So you could do like a latigo and then only cut one of these. If you're going to do the leather cinch, which is perfectly fine for pleasure, not necessarily for working, make sure you do your liner. We've got two different types of cantle covers. There's many different ways to complete your cantle. We're going to do the Cheyenne wrap. And then you got your breast collar options. We'll go ahead and go for the working saddle. These are two options for pleasure saddle that are also in there if you want to turn it into a pleasure saddle. And then you have your rear rigging options. If it's a pleasure saddle and all you want is the pretty billets that you decorate and then put a buckle on, you would use this. We are going to do the full-on rear rigging, so we're going to do this section here. Your seat, the way my pattern is designed, if you want a suede seat, that's fine. You can also just tool the actual piece here, tool it in here, and you don't actually need a suede seat, up to you, but those are options. We're going to go ahead, because it's a working saddle, we're going to do the suede seat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out all of these boxes, but only my working options. I'm going to discard my pleasure options, and then I'll be back. Okay, now that I got all these boxes cut out, I'm going to start sorting it by the type of leather I plan to use. And what I'm going to do, just to make it simple, is I'm going to just do a easy Skiver cover for my pommel. So I will do that, but the swell I want to have be in 2 3-ounce. So I'll go ahead and separate that. I got a Skiver pile and I got a 2 3-ounce pile. And we'll also need a suede pile, by the way. Okay, this has to be of Skiver, so that's going to go with my pommel cover. Let's see what we have. This is my seat, and my seat's going to be made of suede. Let's see. Now this cinch lining here, that's going to be suede. It says suede, so I'll go ahead and cut that loose. And then the rest of this will be 2 3-ounce. And it's probably should be the same suede that you used to cover the seat, just for color consistency. Alright, so my cantle wrap has to be made out of Skiver because it's going to wrap around the edge of the seat. And if you notice, when you look at the seat piece, this here, so we're going to cover it in a very thin Skiver. So we'll go ahead and put that in my Skiver pile. This is the backward lining for my breast collar, so it needs to be lining. It can be suede or Skiver. We're going to go ahead and use suede. This will be your 2 3-ounce. That'll go in your 2 3-ounce pile. We know this is suede. We'll put that in our suede pile. Right here for our rigging, for a working saddle, I'll go ahead and do the leather. It really should be a woven cotton girth. That's beyond the scope of this video, but I'll pull out the suede piece, put that with suede. The rest of these will be 2 3-ounce. This here is going to be 2 3-ounce. Stirrups, we have, this is all, well, your treads are going to be in suede, so let's just go ahead and cut those loose. And then we're going to put that in my pile. We're going to do these in 2 3-ounce. Now, this is for if you want to do Rommel and Reign style bridle. We're going to do a working bridle, so I'm going to go ahead and toss that out because it wouldn't necessarily have Rommel and Reign. You could do Rommel and Reign, but this is your Rommel end, so you'd make that out of 2 3-ounce, and that would be the end of the Rommel portion of the Rommel ring. We're not going to do that. Okay. All of this will be 2 3-ounce. That's pretty obvious. That's the bulk of your saddle right there. Now, the reason why I left these areas blank and put the words on the side is if you want to, trace in a tooling pattern, it's easier to do it if I don't have words all over the place, but you could. I'm going to do a very mild tooling pattern because it just looks better if it has a little bit of that type of detail. Just do like an edge type, and I'll show you how I do that. But if you wanted to get more complex and you wanted to put flowers and all sorts of seat, make a seat that comes to a point here and then comes out and has little inserts, and you could get an idea of what you can do with this piece, because it is the one piece, and you can then tool in whatever fake seat you want to do. Or a lot of times now they actually do have a seat without, they'll do like a suede insert where your bottom is to give your bottom grip, and then the front will be all decorated, like it'll come over this way. So just to give you an idea of why I left it that way. If you're going to tool your skirts, you don't have to do it in kind of like this area here. You just do it, where it's actually going to show. So that's just a thought. And this here would glue on the back here, so that's optional. You could just, you could put in stitches there if you wanted to make it look like it was a stitch. But just to get an idea, 2 3-ounce on this. The other thing is I've given you different types of corners, so you can have an extended corner or a little bit more rounded depending upon the look you're going for. You could even, on some of the older saddles, they actually went to a point. And the reason why they stopped doing a point is because the point would curl up. So by rounding it off, you don't get that curl on the edge. But you've got that for both of these. Usually working fenders are really wide because they're trying to be protective of both horse and rider. In the pleasure saddles, they would be, maybe a little bit narrower. But anyways, this is a good working saddle pattern, and that's in 2 3-ounce. All right, and then the last piece is, I try to put that over my glare spot. This is a backing for your saddle. Now, I say suede. Usually it's a different color. It's usually kind of hairy. What it is lambskin, okay? But regular lambskin is way out of scale, so we won't use regular lambskin. But I could use a chamois. Chamois is about the right color. So that's what I'm going to do. Is it's going to be suede, but it's going to be kind of the color that I would expect sheepskin to be. All right, so that would be your pattern. I'm just covering up the hot spot there. Now, I did a video on how to make leather saddle trees, and so one of the saddle tree that I made in that pattern, that's what I'm going to use for this saddle. And so I have my 2 pieces. This is ready to be covered, and then after covered, it'll be glued on. But this is what I'm going to use for my tree. I also did a clay tree video if you want to make it out of clay. You can also buy one if you want. You may have to modify the pattern. This tree was actually made for the pattern I'm showing you, so the fit should be almost nearly perfect. But to let you know, you have to have your tree done by the time you get to this stage, or make it as part of this stage. I usually do. I usually have, when I'm cutting out my tree at the same time, because it's usually made out of the same 2 3-ounce, right? Anyways, that's the tree I'm going to use, and then you'd have to decide that at this time. All right, so I'm going to start pulling out the materials, and we'll see what goes from there. Okay, so anybody of you who've seen my other patterns know that I am a fan of the glue stick method. Okay, glue stick is a way for me to get the pattern as close to what I want it to look like, close to size, right? Because tracing, you can actually make it actually a little bit bigger if your pin's too thick. So I like to, I just like to use my my glue stick method. Well, to start with this backing now, I was looking for some chamois, and the only thing I have that's close is this suede. It's a little bit thick, but it should show underneath. That's kind of what I'm looking for, and it's about the right color. All right, so I'm going on the wrong side of this. I'm going to glue stick my piece, and right now I'm using Scotch, but you can use any, you know, whatever your favorite is. Elmer's, there's 3 or 4 out there. Just don't use sticky note. It won't stick. It only sticks paper to paper. So I'm just going to pick. It doesn't matter about flaws on this because it's really not going to be seen. It's more the edges, and you want it's the color of the edges that you want. So once you glue stick it on, good pair of scissors. These are leather cutting scissors specifically for leather, which is, I love them. And they don't have a tip too, so I'm not likely to accidentally poke myself. But we'll go ahead and cut that out, and then all these little squares here would be for a this would be the rigging for a pleasure saddle. They don't have D rigging; they actually rig right into these holes in the billet. So this would be your front, and you put your billets there, and then your rear ones. So since we're not making a pleasure saddle, I'm not going to cut out those holes. So I'm just going to cut out on the side. Do not do these either. I probably should have erased them, but that this is exactly the same size as the 2 3-ounce one, and I just duplicated and I forgot to get rid of those. So don't do that. But since this is going to be a saga, and it's going to be multi-days, multi-hours, I recommend getting some type of baggie that after you've cut out your pieces, you can put them in, because you may spend your first, you know, session, all you're doing is cutting out, deciding what you want to, you know, tool, what you don't want to tool, what leathers you're going to use, whether you need to dye the leathers, all sorts of things like that. So have a baggie for the pieces you're not working on, because if you lose one piece during assembly, it ruins the whole entire project, because you have to go back, find that piece, and remake it. Okay, so make sure you have a baggie of some sort to put it in. All right, that was sorry about the glare. So the next thing we're going to do is regular suede, and so these are my suede pieces. Right, and this is going to be a really boring working saddle. Everything's going to be brown. I have a lot of brown, and this is a garment weight suede, so it's actually really thin. It's probably less than a 2-3, but is right in 2-3. I think that's what they call it, is a 2-3. But when I bought it, it was garment, and you get a feel for what thickness you want. It's important on your suede that that the edges, that the dye goes all the way through, that you don't have a line in here. And some suedes, they look really good, and then you cut into them and the dye didn't penetrate all the way, so you have to actually edge coat your suede as well. And this is the type you're looking for. I don't have to edge coat it. This is the right side, and then you have a wrong side. Some suedes don't have a right and a wrong, but this one does. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this over, and I will glue all these pieces on. And fairly simple, and because they're pieces, you can, you know, try and piecework them in, right? So I'll go ahead and I'll show a few of them, and then I'll cut them out. You don't need to watch that. This is going to be long enough. But cutting out is essential. Cutting them out right is essential for a good pattern. You can't stress enough. It's like if you've ever made a dress or a shirt or something, if you don't cut it out right, it doesn't assemble right. So it's important. That's why I like this glue stick method, because I'm going to always be consistent. I'll cut on the lines or I'll cut outside the lines, but I'll consistently cut in a manner that makes sure that everything maintains its ratio. That glue stick is done. So, I mean, you can, that one's dried out. I have to go find some more glue. This one is good. Okay. So I buy these bulk, and sometimes they dry out. All right, so, well, of course I overdid that one. A little note about this seat. I have, let me get that on there real quick. A note about this seat. Now, I've got options that I haven't, trying to get that so I can, there we go. That if I had a book I would talk about, but basically I don't need this here because I'm going to do the rolled cantle, so I will cut to this line here and not this. I don't need the Cheyenne Rule part. So sometimes it can help if you use this instead of the leather, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and just do my inside seat and not do the Cheyenne Rule portion. Working, nothing that different about the working blanket pieces. Probably the easiest assembly is going to be your working saddle blanket because it's just felt. We're just going to do felt. I'm not going to do anything really spectacular because working saddles really aren't supposed to be spectacular. They're just supposed to be able to handle a bull pulling on one end. And then we have our last two lining pieces. I really should just do a string girth, but I probably have one. I went on a binge and made a whole bunch. I think it's black, they're not brown. I don't know if that matters. Okay, trying to cover up that glare there. It bothers me, but it's the only way to get good light here so you can see what I'm doing. You don't believe how many lights I have on in this room to try and not have any shadows. It's amazing. Okay. And then let's see if that'll fit there or not. Well, a little bit of waste, but I can get it to fit right there. And so you can see it's time consuming just to get the pattern laid out. Okay, so I'll go ahead and cut this out, and I'll cut out all these pieces. There's nothing special about any of these that I need to talk about, okay? Okay, so you just need a little touch of Skiver for a Western saddle, unlike English saddle patterns, and this is really very little Skiver. Now, it can be hard to find. It really can be. So a while ago, I found a deal, steal of a deal, on a bag of basically remnant type, it was cream colored remnants, and a lot of it is, you know, flawed. It's got these funky little lines in it. It can be really inconsistent in its thickness, or it gets so thin down here you can almost even see through it. I don't know if you can see those holes there, but you can almost even see through it there. So it goes from tissue paper to about a 1 ounce. And I went ahead and I dyed it. I used an alcohol-based dye because the oil-based ones, the oil stayed in it. So you want to, if you're going to do any chrome tanned, because that's what this was, chrome tan, not vegetable tanned. If you're going to dye any vegetable tanned leather, I recommend an alcohol base. Water base would probably work. The alcohol actually I thought pretty good. Now of course it's not real consistent. Because it looks worse than it is in the camera. It's just because of the glare. But if I got some of the glare down, you'll see it's actually pretty good. But you can see under this light that because of the thickness, some places are thinner, some are thicker. So not real consistent. But look how teeny tiny our pieces are. Okay, so it's not. We're not going to see that huge variation. So this is what I'm going to use. I'm going to try and get something. So I think for my wrap, my cantle wrap, I want to be in this really thin area because I don't want to add a lot of bulk to the back of my seat. Whereas for my pommel and horn, I want something a little bit thicker, and that's in this area here. So that is actually a benefit of this type of leather, is that I can decide, okay, I want a little bit thicker, and this I want a little bit thinner. Works great for English saddles because I can do the piping in the really thin stuff, and I get really thin piping because it's like a fold over. Just talking. So I don't want to ramble too much. We're going to be around this for a while. But anyways, I will go ahead and probably use this area. It's not real bad for my horn and my cantle, or horn and pommel, so we'll do that. And let's see where right, so you know, when you do crafts like this, you do everything you can to save money. So this it was a deal on eBay. One of the dealers selling white Skiver by cream colored Skiver by the pound, and so I did that. And there we go. And then my horn will be right next to it. So that's my thicker stuff. And then it was like $20 a pound. It was so cheap. All right, and then we'll do the cancel in here because this is really, really, really thin. It's like tissue paper. We'll do Cheyenne Rule. Now the Cheyenne Rule can be done, you know, in a totally different color. It could be done in white or whatever. But we're just doing boring, so we're gonna just put it right in there. It gets thin right about there. Probably put it closer. See, sometimes seeing decision making will help you, you know, understand that these are the choices you have available to you, right? That's one of the reasons why I can't do kits, is I can't get it consistent. Okay, now if I was going to use a 2-3 ounce for my pommel cover, I would cut here, but because I'm going to do Skiver, I'm going to go ahead and use the entire rectangle. Okay, that's the only piece that I have anything to say about that. And of course, get your center out, and then that's pretty much it on your Skiver. So I'll go ahead and cut these out. Okay, so I have these pieces cut out, and I just wanted to come back and talk about the horn pieces. You've got two different sizes. You can do really teeny tiny pleasure, or which is the inside, or we're doing the working saddle because it's going to be a much stronger horn to be able to handle a bull hanging onto it, right, with a rope. So that's the difference between them. I usually always do the bigger one and then just cut down, but to show you that a pleasure saddle horn is really tiny compared to a working saddle horn, because I'm trying to show you the differences. There's subtle differences that'll make a difference when you're showing the difference between a working saddle and a pleasure saddle. Okay, so the bulk of your work is going to be in the 2-3 ounce range. And I'm going to recommend, I see calf, kip, or 2-3 ounce. Calf used to be available. They were really small skins, which actually made them affordable because usually you buy by the square inch or square foot. And so if you had a small, you know, calf, it wasn't a very big skin, so it was affordable. It was like, you know, a third more than the price of buying a whole cow skin, right? But because a whole cow was so huge, the calf just made it affordable. So even though the per square foot was more, it was affordable to buy the whole skin. And if you get a cut skin, they charge you 60% more. So you always want to get a whole skin. So you can try and buy these. Tandy has pieces, Rio Rondo has pieces you can buy that are pre-dyed or that you can dye yourself. Now I do so much, and I have a Tandy leather nearby, and I have a resale license, so I get discounts, right? So I buy whole skins. The calf is very hard to find, if you can find it all. Kip is what I prefer to get. Kip is a younger animal, so it's not as big, and it still has some of the flexibility of the full skins. Of the calf, still a little bit stiffer, so it doesn't have the same drape as calf. Calf drapes really nicely. It tools really well. Kip would be your next bet if you can get kip. And of course, if you buy a skin, you have to dye it. So you'll have to buy whatever dye. I like the Pro dyes. I think they work better. I think on a 2-3 ounce an oil-based dye penetrates better. It's really hard to find oil-based dyes now. Usually they only have the EcoFlow, which is water-based. So if you can find either an oil or even an alcohol-based dye, I just think those work better. But for the environment, they stopped really stocking those at Tandy. I think to get a good oil-based dye, I have to buy like 2 cases of the quartz, and it's just a little bit too much for me. I don't even have the storage space for it, even though I probably use it over the rest of my lifetime. But it just, you have to store it, you have to pay for it. It's like, never mind. So anyways, this is pre-dyed. I already dyed it. And I think I used alcohol based on this one because it dried really fast. So it's not the oil based that I like. I only dyed one side. I didn't dye the back side. I only dyed the front. Okay. And it does seem a little bit streaky, and it is. So I'll have to see where I can find the most consistent area. When you're dealing with 2-3 ounce, you have to be careful of flaws. All right, I mean, any leather you have to, because it's a natural product. It's not man-made. There's no perfection in these animals. So I don't know if you can see. This one here has got little holes here, and I don't know if those are injuries to the animal. Let's see if I can get down there. I got glue on my finger. So you can see this would be an area I would avoid because of these, little scratches and everything. Or what I could do is, if I know for sure I could do it, there's a place on my saddle that wouldn't show, so I could actually put my skirt there, right? Because this center area is not going to be seen, so that's a way to hide some of the flaws as well. But you want to look for those. If you find it, after you dye it and then you cut it out that you don't like the what it looks like, you can dye it again before you assemble it. All right, so I'll cut this out. I'll see what it looks like, and if I think it's too streaky, I will go ahead and dye it again. This is a medium brown. And that way it'll still match my saddle, but it also kind of match, get the more consistent dye. It's easier just to dip small pieces into the dye than it is to try and get an entire skin. I don't know how saddle makers do it. They must, do multiple coats. I usually have to do it outside in the sun, and so it dries really fast on me. Anyways, I'll go ahead and I'll put these on the back side. Let's see if there's anything special about any of these pieces. I'm going to use the Cheyenne Rule, so I will keep this. So this piece, because I'm going to do the Cheyenne Rule, I'm actually going to, oh heavens, yeah, I'm going to glue this onto the front side, and then I'm going to soak it off. Well, I'm going to soak all the pieces I'm going to tool anyways, because it has to be wet in order to take a pattern. So that piece I'll put on the front. I'll show you. And then, because I want to make sure I do my scoring line. And I do a lot of piecework, if you haven't noticed. I end up with lots of little pieces, and then I fit them together. So I'm going to find probably my prettiest, and it's always easier to dye to the front. So this is kind of nice. We're going to do it there because that's a pretty nice. I don't think I have any flaws that can't be either tooled out, or it's pretty smooth. That's where we're going to go. So there's nothing crazier than when you get a piece of leather and you cut everything out, and then you go and look at it, and there's this great big huge flaw like running diagonally right through your entire pattern. It's heartbreaking. So always look for your flaws before. And we'll just cut this free of the bigger piece. Sorry, you're stuck with that light glare. All right. So that's my piece. I'll go ahead and cut it out, and then when I get to my cutting board to do all my skiving and everything, I'll score the line here for my Cheyenne Rule. The rest of these pieces, let's see what else. We're going to do it all on the back side. Wrong side. I shouldn't say back side. People giggle at that word. At least my teenager does. So I'm going to try and use up this area here because I've got lots of little pieces. I don't have any major, see that there I would worry about. That's actually in there. So I have to worry about that. But I can put other pieces in here as I'm rolling it over. In fact, I've got quite a few of these right along here. But I want to use this up, and this area here is fine. So let's see if I can do my smaller pieces and try to avoid that. All right, let's see what we got here. Okay, can we do this right in there? And if I get that, it'll be on the rigging piece that'll be underneath the saddle and never seen. That's a perfect place for it. Okay, awesome. So this is what they, if you ever read any of the books and they say piece around the flaws, right? This is what we're doing. And it is sometimes a matter of just flipping forward and back. And sometimes you have waste and there's nothing you can do about it. So let's see if I flip over. That's going to be right in my rigging pieces so nobody will see it. And then this area is really nice. So I wasn't too worried I can fit some of these. Oh, I can put that right there. Perfect. That's perfect. It's good, good, good. So put that right there. And then what other pieces have I got here? Let's see, I've got these. I know, rear-rounded does it better. They give you a piece of leather that fits the pattern that they have, and then you don't have to think about this, but this is less expensive over time, so it's a good skill to have. Okay, so these are actually the spacers for my stirrups, and that way you get them the right width. So let's see, those are important. They don't have to be dyed, by the way. They could be any scrap that you had. Okay, so that's good. And then let's see what else we can do. We know this area here is really clean, so we can just kind of put that there. Good. All right, what else do we have? Got this little piece here. These are for your keepers. You could just use leather lace for these keepers, but I like these because it's just a little bit more, I don't know, more realistic, because usually they do, and usually that's where the stamp of the saddle brand is one of the places where they'll put their stamp, and it's kind of a cool little detail that makes a difference, I think, in the long term. Okay, what else have we got? So we've got these little itty bitty pieces here. We could probably fit them. Where can we fit them? Well, we'll wait on them then. Okay, now, how clean am I? That's something to avoid. So I could probably put that there. Because this, oh, sorry, you can see that. So I can put that there because I want to hide this little flaw right here. So that would be a good place to put that. And we'll cut off some of this paper. More helpful. And then so we'll need to go this way. Good. So now I could probably tuck those right in there, right? Good. All right. Just so you know, everybody learns their own way of doing things. I'm just showing you mine. So just to give you an idea of options, you do it whatever way you're comfortable, right? All right, so we know that's good. Okay, here. My thumb is, my finger as I look, it's clean because that's going to go on that, which is going to be hidden. That's good. So we'll go ahead and put these stirrup leathers or stairs right here. Maybe I'll do a pleasure saddle with different skirt types in the future if this goes well. Okay, that's going to come off, so I'll just do a little there. What have I got left here? So you see I'm piecing all the smaller ones, right? Because I want to make sure I use up as much leather as I can. I think this cantle will go right here. I know there's a little bit of a bend in here, but I think I might be able to use that because this has to bend, so that might be useful. And there's no flaws in there, so that'll be good. Oh, great way to use that up. And then probably even put it right in where the natural bend of the skin is. Hope you can see kind of what I'm doing here. It's hard to show a lot of this stuff on camera. All right, now I have my skirts. These are important to not have flaws on the edges. So I'm happy with that. But that's not going to be. So this is a little worrisome. Yeah. So can I do it like that and hide it? One little flaw right here I have to worry about. So if I can get it pieced right to the corner, I can put it right in that opening. Right, so what I do is this way. No, it's this way. Okay, so if I get it in that corner, and then flaws right there, perfect. Okay, so I know I want to do that corner. Facing forward to avoid that flaw. Okay. And then put that in there. That's good. Alright, so I have this piece. That's my rear jockey, so let's see what's up in that area. It's not too bad. This is really going to show, so I have to make sure. I think I'll do it that way. Do it this way. That should. So it's just a little bit of weight, something in there I don't like, so I'll probably scoot it back a little bit too. Alright, and then I have my fenders. Now these are going to be adjustable. We'll put a buckle down here, flip it over, and then this will flip under, and then now you have your actual adjustable stirrups. So I want to make sure I find a long area that has no brilliant flaws right where my fenders are going to be. So get this a little bit more. Actually, the best thing for me to do at this point is just to go ahead and cut these pieces. Cut these right off my skin, and then put in this piece here. This one too. Brilliant, right? Then we can be careful not to throw away your pieces. I've done that before too. All right, so now we want to look at, we could look at this edge, right? It's all right. I think I like this edge better. It's a little bit thinner. So there's really nothing major. And I think if I put it here, I'll get the most consistent dye for the fenders. Trying not to have to dye it again, but we'll see. Alright, I think that's about what we want to do. That's about right. I should probably dry fit it one more time just to make sure. That was pretty good. Every time I videos, I find a different way to place my camera, but then it makes my working area still a little bit different than the last time. So I apologize if I went all over the place. Alright, so it's entirely straight. Too close to the edge. Try it again. So, I'm not even sure how long we've been at it here. Just getting stuff cut out can take you an hour. Some people charge some money for their beautifully tooled Western saddles. Guaranteed they did spend a lot of time on those saddles. If they come together really well, they spend a lot of time just doing what I'm doing right now. And gives you great appreciation for the hard work they put in. Alright, so I think you have an idea of that. I'm going to go ahead and leave. I'm going to spend the rest of my time cutting out all these pieces. And when I get to my cutting board for skiving and everything, that's when I should be back. Okay, so it's been about, probably 45 minutes. Oh, maybe 30 minutes. It's been about 30 minutes. I've got all my pieces here that were cut out as far as they could go, and they're in a baggie, so I didn't want to lose any of them. And now we're going to sort out the ones that need more work and the ones that don't. So I've got my tree and my pommel, put those back in the bag. Don't need to deal with those. This one's pretty much done. Go ahead and take the paper off of that one. You see the paper should come off pretty easy. Make sure paper's one side, pattern's another. This one needs to be tooled, but it doesn't need to be skived. So I can remove the paper, and I'll put that in its own special thing, because I'm going to do a own special pile, because I'm just going to do an edge treatment just to give it a little bit of finishing. This is done, so we can just take the paper off of that. And that's one side, that's the other. Your blanket pieces, these you can pull the paper off of those. The treads, you can take that off. This is your Cheyenne Rule, you can take that off. Anything that's your suede pieces, you can take. I'll try and pull out all my suede pieces. Those all can have the paper removed now. Let's see, what else have we got in here? That can go. The seat can go. There's another suede piece. The swell here, we're not going to, I mean, we could tool it, but we're not going to tool it, so just put that aside. This will be tooled, but we can take the paper off. We do need to do our scoring right here, so we'll pull. This is going to stay on the board. You have two of your stirrups have holes that need to be pre-poked. It'll just make it better. So let's see if we can find those. All right, so there's two of these that have, you see the holes. I do a hidden pin method. I'm going to show you how to do that, which would be accurate for a roping type saddle, because anything that would catch the lasso, they don't want that, right? So they wouldn't necessarily have a concho with a decoration. They would have it as hidden as possible. So I'm going to put those aside because I have to put holes in them. But the other two pieces, they can be pulled aside and paper pulled off. Let's see what we got. We need holes in our billets, and we've got 2 front and 2 rear on those. There we go. I'm going to find the other rear piece. Let's see. Our cinches, oh, there's the rear piece. Our cinches we have to make and skive these. We have to make these holes for our little ring buckles. So we'll go ahead and put those in our work pile. Same thing with the rear cinch. Our rigging, we're going to skive that. We need to skive that whole thing. Cantle, no problem. We put that aside. That was suede, so I put that there. Horn pieces can go, have the paper removed. Both of my billet keepers, paper came off of this one, but they need to be skived, so we're going to put those aside. I do like to skive this little piece. It goes back here. just to make it a little bit thinner. So I'll go ahead and skive that. There's 4 billet keepers, 2 for the front, 2 for the rear. These spacers here for your stirrups, they actually don't need to be skived or anything. These are pretty much perfect at 2-3 ounce. The center piece of our breast collar, we need to cut holes for the tie-down loop, and we also need to skive this. It just makes it lay flatter. We'll skive the ends of the breast collars, and probably anything that you want to thin down. I'm going to go ahead and skive the ends of this because I'm going to put a buckle on there, even though you could do a fold over, but go ahead and skive it anyways because any overlap should be skived down. This here is going to overlap because you're going to put your D-rings in there. These pieces I usually like to use a knife to cut out, just because I get it cleaner than when I use scissors. So I'm going to do make sure I do those. These are going to be tooled. I'll put an edge, some type of edge something on it, so I can pull off the paper, and that'll be in my. If the paper doesn't come off on these pieces, it's no big deal because you're going to soak them anyways to get them nice and wet, so that you can get a good grip with you, whatever your tooling pattern is going to be. So we can take the paper off and put those in my to be tooled pile, right? I probably went through that really quickly, but it's more important that you work on the pieces that need to be worked on. So the first one, and probably the easiest one, is going to be this scoring. We're just going to score a line, and you can use whatever blade or knife that you like. I like to use a scalpel, and so I'm just going to start right about here where this is where your pen would go to symbol, and we're going to start right about where that is, and we're only going to go maybe about halfway. We're just trying to make it so it will bend even on this curve. So I'll go ahead and go around, and then we'll check it. And if it doesn't look like it's enough, I'll do it again. But just see how it will allow the allow this to bend around, and that's gonna. I don't really want to pull that off because I don't want to ruin my seat. But you can see how we're gonna get it to go down and make our Cheyenne Rule. Okay, so just enough that it will make that bend. And like I said, it's only maybe about halfway. Even if we went 3/4, it'd be fine. You just want to make sure you don't go all the way. All right, so put that aside because it's going to be tooled. We can soak the paper off of that. Some of these are pretty simple and to understand, and it doesn't have to be perfect. I usually end up going over a little bit to the hole. This was actually a reduced down from a full-size pattern, and that's why these holes look like that, because that's how big they would be in scale. But I found that the slit needs to be a little bit longer in order to hold my my rings, and I'll show you that. So just gonna thin that down a little bit, so when I get the fold over, it'll be about, you know, half. It'll be the same thickness as what wasn't skived. That's what we're trying to do here. So we'll go ahead and make our hole. Usually it's a little bit longer. And then you can skive off the paper if it sticks. And then skive that down carefully so I don't skive all the way through. I want to just get this nice and flat. All right, so, and then we can take the paper off. Okay, so that can go in your done pile, the ones that already have the paper taken off. And then we'll do the rear one as well. And sometimes the paper comes off a little bit, and so you can just kind of hold it down to make your line. Down to make your line. And then skive. In this case, I did actually put a grayed out area for you to skive. So this is a whole. This is a Kemp came from my other saddle pattern that's in my roper book, Tooling the Roper book, if you're interested in getting some more in-depth. But this is the way it fits. It's a lot better than just a straight line. This is actually what you would use for roping, better grip on the horse's belly. Okay, so that I've got my holes and I've skived it. Put that aside. Some of this, like I said, pretty simple. Breast collar, I want to get that skived, and then get that skived, and then pull off the paper. You can see pulling off the paper can be really easy. Where's the other one? It's the other breast color piece. So try to do this as quickly as possible because this is not riveting TV right now, but it's important. Make sure the pieces don't get in there. All right, so we'll do billy keepers. Try and keep that. So, because those are going to be wrapped around, so I'm going to skive the whole entire piece. Sometimes that's good. All right, and that's done. All right, so here's what I mean by skive all the way through. See how I skived all the way through? I'm going to show you what I do to rescue these pieces. And it only works if you're really careful and on edges like this where it's not going to show. If it was in the middle, I wouldn't bother with this, but I'm going to put some glue on there because I do this often enough that I'd have to remake all of my pieces. Okay, and then on the front side here, I'm going to match it. And because I know that this is going to be pushed around the back, and this is the part that's going to show here. Let's see how much closer I can get that light in. So you can see the this part's going to show, so that isn't going to show. So I'll just go ahead and let that side dry, and then I'll come back and reskive it correctly. But as you can see, it happens, and it's fixable. You just don't want it to happen all the time. So I'll put that aside and do that last. Here we want to, especially in here, just fold over. All right. Pull that paper off. Now's not the time to lose pieces, right? And then this side. I just skive through there too. So I think I'm trying to hurry too much. So I'll show you. It's still fixable. You just need to be able to match. So I just have to let it dry and try it again. Be a little bit more careful. So again, this won't show. It's underneath the saddle, so it's okay if you do a skive through on this piece. Nobody's going to see this, because this is going to fold up and under, right? And then the saddle's going to be on top of it. Nobody will see it. So we're going to put the strength back into it. Put that aside to dry. This one was done. Was it done? Was I happy with that one? Yeah. All right. Just give it a little bit more. All right. And actually, I find it happens more often with a sharp blade than a dull blade. Okay, these little things I want to just take a little off the edges if I want to do a buckle, or even if I just want to fold them over and not use a buckle on these. It's still extra bulk I don't need. I'm always looking for the what it looks like in reality, right? So too much thickness is not real, and we're already kind of pushing it with 2-3. 2-3 is about the smallest you can find for tooling leather that's readily available. So if you get a 1 ounce, it actually, a lot of these saddles would be better because you wouldn't have to skive everything. But just so you know that even in the real saddle making world, skiving is huge. They have a tool for skiving like big areas. It's like a scraper thing. It's not really suitable for this size, but it is really good for big pieces. If you wanted to hand thin a huge piece, you could do that. Let's see, I'm almost done with okay, this is my rear rigging strap, so I'm going to go ahead and this won't be seen, but I do want it thinner. And tooling leather, when it's thinned, it maintains its strength. So there's a lot of, if you try to use like Skiver, it wouldn't be able to keep up the strength of this. I think I may have to, no, I think it's just the leather. All right, there we go. That's done. Let's see, what else have we got? Right. Another billet. we're almost down to just where we have to skive and make holes, and then I'll talk about how to make holes because there's usually big discussions on that and the boards, and I'll show you some of the options. Talk about that in a little bit. All right, so now we have our, oh, I didn't want to do that. Okay, so if the paper comes off, you can do, we're not gonna, you can actually put it back on. Didn't really want that on my cutting board, but that's all right. Okay, so put a little bit of glue, we'll put it back on. So we can't get it to match its original position, and all right, so we'll skive this little piece here, and then we want to make these two little slits. So when your horse has a tie down, the tie down does not go through the loop, the metal loop that's on the breast collar. It actually goes through a strap that's in this piece right here. That would be more accurate. So we're going to try and be as accurate as possible. So those are my two little strips, and then it's a little wet, but that one's done. Okay, this little piece to skive a little, and some of these smaller ones can be a little tough, so I'm just gonna try and see what I can hold on to. And all right, almost. The only reason why I don't get rid of my fingernails is moments like this. Fingernails are just awesome. Okay, so that's a little bit thinned out. What have we got left? All right, now we have, let's just do holes. Now these here have to be, are just little pin holes. And so to do pin holes, you could just use a pin, because it's just really placement to make sure that they're placed evenly on both sides. Makes for more symmetrical stirrups. So this is an awl. You can use a needle on a stick, or you can use an awl, and you just really want to put your holes just so you can see them on the other side. So I don't know how close I can get, but you see now I know where that hole goes. So I'm going to do that because we're going to stick a pin in there, and I just want it in the place where I want it, right? Okay, so those you can pull off the paper and put aside. Okay, so now we have these four, and they need both skiving and holes. So I'll skive first. And holes on these can be, on these teeny tiny ones, can really be kind of, see if you can see what I'm doing. Yeah, no speed. Works so much better if I don't make it fast. Just down a little bit, and then straight. And this type of thing does take some practice, and never rush. And if you have to do multiple passes, that's fine, right? And these are my front ones. I really need to use a latigo tie, but that's fine. We'll show you what the pattern is, and then you can make modifications. And if you notice, I'm leaving the paper on because I have my hole guides on the paper, and they can be a little bit tricky. All right, so we talked about the awl, and the awl is a great way just to make a hole, but then you only just barely see it, right? And so it may work for you, but what I'm going to do instead is show you there's some other ways. Now you can pre-punch so that you know that your holes are where you want them. And then there are people who use mechanical pencils. You'll have to go to the boards either on Facebook, Model Horse Blab, even Yahoo has like Model Horse Tack Maker, which is not nearly as active right now as Facebook, for me at least. So I'm going to just pre-poke these holes just to make sure when I'm doing it, the paper sometimes slips. So I want to know where my holes are going to be ahead of time. I'm not done yet, okay? That's just guide holes. And it's especially on these teeny tiny ones, You may only want to use the awl. I've got another tool that I'm going to show you that it's not a cheap tool, but I make so many holes. It was a, you want to go straight down, by the way. Leather doesn't always want to cooperate, right? So go straight down and make sure your paper is aligned. And then we'll look at the other side and help us with our guide holes. These are especially important because you want to get them straight. They will be seen. So, and this paper wants to come off really bad, and I don't want it to mess up my hole making. So, let's see if we can get these straight. This might be more holes than you need. You can adjust this later as you played around with the pattern. So now, see how it's not really centered? And that's what I worry about. And so the paper wasn't quite centered. And came loose. So let's see if I can remake some of those holes. And the cool thing about pilot holes like this is that they actually close up, right? So that hole and that hole, both of those need to be redone. Right. So pilot holes will close up. That's what leather likes to do. So let's see. I got my holes. I don't think I'm going to get much better than that. Okay. So now I have my pilot holes. And like I said, some people use a mechanical pencil and then they hammer it, and it actually removes the a little bit of the leather so that you actually have a hole in that's open. And what I'm going to use is this tool, and it was one Tandy leather. It's like making holes in gloves, and there's actually 5 different hole settings. And so you know, if you're doing bridles, it's nice to have this really teeny tiny one. And for these teeny tiny billets, that's really the size I want to use. So now that I have my pilot hole, let's see, I'm going to have to move this so I can see it. So I find my pilot hole, because now I can see from the front where I want it. And then I should be able to make that hole. See, really nice. And it does remove a little bit of the leather, which is why that hole is so clean. Different from the awl, because all the awl does was make the hole and then it closes up and doesn't really, it doesn't really remove anything. It's not punching out anything. And if I can do this right, let's hope I can do this right. I have to be able to really, really careful with my pilot holes. All right. Getting these straight, I think that's an art unto its own. And then one more. That one's a little off center, but you get it. So I can pull the paper off, put that aside. I wasn't planning on tooling those. And then just go ahead and take that paper off. I don't think it's going to help me. So using my pilot hole, I'm turning it this way because I need to be able to, there's too much shadow the other way. I should put my other glasses on, but yeah, it's a little off. And this is actually pretty typical of making holes, believe it or not. It is so hard to get these straight. And even with the, well, most of that's going to go in a billet keeper, so I'm not too worried. And it's a working saddle. All right, so these are the holes that matter. They're the ones I'm going to show the most. But there you go. Those are holes. And they're not entirely straight. And then let's do this 2 more times. And I'm going to do this off camera, so I'm just going to stop. Okay, so those are how that tool worked on these. And you can see they're permanent holes. They're not going to close up. And like I said, there's different ways to do it. I like my tool. It's not a cheap tool, but if you're going to do a lot of holes and bridles and saddles, you may find it probably the easiest and the most controllable. But the mechanical pencil method also works. I'm not sure how durable it is, but it does work. Let's quickly go back to this. We're going to fix, this is the one that I glued. And let me show you. I'm not going to go in the same one because I'll just skive it exactly the same. So I'm going to go above it, and I'm going to skive it correctly this time. See? Skived correctly. And now I'm going to swing around the other way and skive off that. And then there you go. You still have, when you go to wrap this as your billy keeper, nobody's going to know you did that, right? Because it'll be wrapped in, shh, don't tell anyone. All right, and then we had this piece too. So we're going to, again, not start where we started before. Just kind of get that done, and then we'll bring it around this way just to catch any of the extra that didn't get glued down. But there we go. So again, there you go, repaired. And then the last pieces are these, and don't just cut a slit. I like to try and cut out the hole to actually make a hole. A lot of times there's just a slit, and it is actually a hole, and it's ingenious. They actually use hole punches to do it. If you see how they do it in real life, they'll just do a series of hole punches, and I tried to use my hole puncher, and it doesn't work. Not nearly as well as what I'm doing right now. So I'll go ahead and cut out that slit, and then see how well that did over here. So my cutting board is so abused. It's all this tip work. And then work it from this side. Yeah, I think we may have gotten that. So it's pretty good. And then for this, it's either inside the line, outside the line. Just try and make it consistent. Outside the line gives you a little bit better results, I think. And then just round, 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 round. And I like this number 25 blade for tip work. That's why I pulled it out, but it also works for skiving. Should probably get my 11 out so you can see, but not a big a deal. All right, and then again, tip work with a blade. You want to try to be as consistent in your pressure as possible. And then you don't have to cut several times. So, oopsie. And then round is really hard to do with a blade, but it's easier to do with a blade than it is with scissors. If I get straight down with my blade, I shouldn't get too much warping. And then we'll see what that piece looks like. Alright, so you can see, let's see what that piece looks like, and then you know, we can probably pull that little piece out there, and probably even exaggerate this over here a little bit. And this is just me doing little modifications after I cut to get that round that I'm looking for. Paper can come off. Of course, now it's being a pain, but I'll just skive it off. All right. Boom. And this. Remember, straight up and down. You want it to be 90-degree angle to what you're cutting. Sometimes the paper wants to come off right when you don't want it to. There you go. Let's see what that looks like. Well, a little bit of corners on my. We're gonna put a concho on there anyway, so I think that's all right. Yeah, that's fine. All right. So that is cutting out the pattern, and I would consider that mostly day one. Cutting out the pattern, pulling off all the paper, getting all the details cut, and Next time we'll start doing, we'll do a little bit of tooling next time.